Red Baron Cosplay. I just got back from Dragon Con not too long ago, and my most frequently asked question while I was there was about this mask I made. Hopefully you recognize it. So while I was there, I had a still work in progress outfit that was kind of mashup of the Fierce Deity and Majora's mask. So it was surprisingly well received. But I told a few people I would make a tutorial for the mask, and that's what I'm going to do. So I don't really have any video that I took while I was making it, but I did take some progress photos. So I'm just going to talk through it, explain what I did, the tools I used, and show you the pictures of what I did as well. So basically this all started out as insulation foam, but you can tell from thickness it's a little bit too thick for insulation foam. If you guys don't know what that is, it's also called expanded polystyrene or EPS foam. You can find it at Home Depot or Lowe's. So it's giant sheets. And you can buy like a giant like 8x12 sheet for maybe like 20-30 bucks. So it'll last you a long time. That's what this started out as. And I just started with the heart shape of the mask. I left the spikes for later. And I ended up gluing 2 sheets together. And my favorite method for that is I get Super 77, which you can get at Home Depot, Lowe's, or Walmart, basically anywhere. And it's one of the only adhesives that won't eat through EPS, so that's nice. You basically just spray on a decent layer on both sides, wait till it's tacky, and then you stick it together, and then those sheets are not coming apart no matter what you do. The foam will rip before those glued on sections will. So after that was done, I took a wood rasp, which looks like this. And these are great at just eating away foam like nobody's business. And it makes quick work of getting down to your basic shape. And I just got down to, the basic curves that I wanted. And after you get to that point, it's going to be pretty fuzzy. And so I start with a 80 grit sandpaper and go all the way down. For this one, I only went down to 120 because I wasn't too worried about it, but you can go down to 220 or even 400 for a super smooth finish. And yeah, so I just hand sanded it. I do have a palm sander, but just with all the curves, I didn't want to be putting that much pressure on it. It was probably going to flatten those curves out, so I didn't want that. After that, I cut out the eye holes. So they were empty sockets because I knew that I did want them to glow, so I was going to fill that in with a clear acrylic ball or ornament later. And I'll talk about that later. And then after that, I started drawing on my design, and I do have a picture of that. It should be hopefully somewhere over there. And once I had my design where I wanted it, which was a lot of going back, trying to draw it with Sharpie, and then realizing it was the wrong design, and then putting on a different colored Sharpie to try to fix it. A lot of ruler measurements. Once I was finally happy with it, I took a wood burning kit, which I have over here, I believe. Yeah. These things are really cheap. I got mine at Harbor Freight for like 15 bucks. And they're great. They come with a whole bunch of attachments. It's just this little thing. The attachment I used for it was this. It just screws right on. It'll heat up. You do want to try, if you can, these outside or in a really well-ventilated area because melted foam is not compatible for your lungs. So definitely do that in a well-ventilated area, but once I had the design I wanted, I just very, very lightly barely touch the hot part of the wood-burning tool to the foam, and it'll just immediately start melting away. And I did those little holes, and then I did these as well, so I had really well-defined trenches. And yeah, so after that, I needed to fill in these trenches because obviously they're raised. So I took puffy paint and I began filling them in until they were the desired depth that I wanted. And I personally had a pretty hard time getting it smooth. So I ended up using Quick Seal, which is this. Again, you can find it at Home Depot or Lowe's. It's a caulk adhesive, so it dries really quick within like 15 minutes. It isn't very sandable. It's pretty easy to smooth with your finger if you have wet water, but maybe some wood filler or spackle might be better for next time. That's just what I happen to use. Once I had all of these raised parts to where I wanted them, I started working on the spikes. So the spikes, I had little indents drilled into each of these areas with my Dremel. I'm using a drum sander. So basically, I have that right here. What I did is I pulled the drum up a little bit, and that way when you go down, it'll cut into the foam, and then I could just rotate a little bit outwards, so until it was the diameter that I wanted. And all of this was marked out in Sharpie before I did it, just to make sure that everything was exact, because it is such a symmetrical mask, and you'll be able to tell if something's off. After those holes were in place, I took more insulation foam and just carved out each spike. You want to be really careful because it's very, very easy to break them off when you're sanding them. So I just got to the very rough shape of it, and then I used sanding paper around 100 grit to get to the shape that I actually wanted, and then sand it further down with like a 220 to make sure it was really, really smooth. And I did that for each spike. And I know for some masks, they like to have a spike. The longest spike is the yellow one, the shortest one is the blue one, but I like them to be all the same size, so I guess it's your preference, but I thought that's what looked the best for this one. And at that point, I glued, once you have all the spikes together and you have them how you like them, I glued them in, again with Super 77, since that doesn't eat up the foam, and just made the spikes a little bit bigger than the holes, so you have that friction and the glue holding them together. At that point, you're good to seal your foam. Definitely very, very important to seal it, because this foam will be eaten away by anything, and it'll break even if you look at it. So definitely very important to seal. I did a few coats of wood glue, so it doesn't really matter which brand. This is what I use. It's, again, something from Home Depot. I like it because it's sandable. It does get a little bit annoying after a while, just keeping on putting a layer on, sanding it, putting a layer on, sanding it. But I wasn't too careful with sanding because I did want it to have like a gross texture to it. To get my gross wood texture-y feeling to it, after I had the wood glue, and it'll be really, really hard, and it'll be hard to crack it if you have enough layers. If you don't have enough layers, it'll definitely, like, any flexing, it'll immediately crack, so be careful with that. Definitely put enough layers on. But after the wood glue, I took Plastidip. I don't have any over here, but most people tell you for Plastidip to put it in a warm bucket of water, and that's going to ensure that you get a nice smooth finish, because once you put Plastidip on, you can't sand that. You're going to get a really weird, nasty, gross texture if you try to sand it, and it's not going to be nice. But I wanted a gross wood texture, and if you spray on Plastidip while it's cool, you'll get a weird, fuzzy, grainy texture. So that's what I did. I took it while it was just right out of, I had a container in my living room that it was stored in. It was maybe like 70 degrees or around there that it was in. And I just sprayed it right on, and it had this just weird fuzzy texture, which works for me. And I did probably 3 or 4 coats of Plastidip. Didn't do it on the back because I wasn't worried about having that texture on the back, and it's strong enough from the wood glue itself. And then at that point, I put on Battle Damage. Because it's supposed to be such an old mask, there's no way that it could have been thrown around and hit a few times. So what I did for that is I used my Dremel again. I grabbed a rotary tool, which is one of the little discs, and I just flung it kind of across the mask, and that causes little cracks that look like they could be from the wood grain or where it got hit by a sword or what happened. And I have like a tip right here that looks like it's kind of cracked off a little bit, or this one that looks like it's cracked off, because those spikes aren't going to be perfect after a few thousand years. So do the battle damage after it looks all nice. It makes me cry, but it's okay. And after you do that, make sure you don't reseal any places if you cut it too deep or anything like that. And then you can start painting. So painting, I probably have the best paints. I just use Liquitex K6. I know that some people recommend heavy body, but this worked fine for me. I started with like a burnt sienna brown, just did it all across the entire mask. I'll show it to you. It looks kind of really weird. But I would definitely want to give it like a wood background. After I had that bright brown, I put on a dark brown over it. You can see it's starting to look a little bit better at that point. And then after that, it would give me a dark enough background or a woody enough background that I could start putting my actual paints down. So just started painting all of it. There's no really rhyme or reason to it. Just get it on there, essentially, until it looks right. You can try stenciling that with Sharpie if you want, if you're not worried about, you're going to cover it up in paint anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And then after I had all the paint on there, again, I didn't want it to look like it was freshly painted, so I did a black wash, where you take black paint, add water to it, mix it around so it's all just watery paint, and then slather it all over, and it gets into all the low spots, all the cuts you made. It looks gross. And then the white was still a little bit too white, or the black from the black wash looked kind of artificial to me. So I grabbed more of that burnt sienna brown and made a wash of that as well, and that kind of looked like it just had some dirt and crap just caked into it. So I liked that finish. At that point, basically all I had to do were the eyes. And I went and I couldn't find any in stores, but I bought clear acrylic ornaments online in the 70mm size. That's just what worked for mine. It would vary depending on how big you made your mask, but that's what worked for me. And they already came in half, and I just smashed them in there because they do have a little bit of bend to them, so they were nice and snug. And then I reinforced that with Liquid Nails Project Glue. There's no real reason why I used that, just I had it on hand and I decided to use it. So that's that white glue right here. Does take about 24 hours to dry, so you want to make sure that sets before you start painting it. For painting the acrylic balls, I did most of it on the inside. So I started with the yellow at the very center, and then while the yellow was still wet, I went in and did the orange, so there was a very smooth transition because I didn't want to make it look like there was a, a harsh line between it. So it kind of looks like it in the camera, but it's okay when it's on the other side of the mask. It looks transitional. And then I did the pupil and iris on the outside, and I made a little bit of a raised pupil with puppy paint again. And then the lighting that I did, it's kind of a ghetto setup because I was lazy and trying to get ready for DragonCon. But I just grabbed display lighting from Joann's. It's like $10. It's a 3 or 4 foot long strip of these little teeny tiny LEDs. They're really bright. I'll show you. So they're pretty bright, kind of hard to see when I still have the lights on. But they work pretty well. They also come in dimmer colors if you want a dimmer lighting, but I put enough acrylic paint on the inside of my ornaments that it was pretty well diffused. And I just hot glued those little mini tiny LEDs to pieces of EVA foam just because those are easy to just stick right in there. And then if I want to use this light for something different, I can just pop them off because hot glue isn't very hard to pop off. And then the battery pack is right here with the switch, and it could just be velcroed off. And then you have very easy access to your batteries and your switch. And the elastic strap, just elastic. I was really worried that it was going to fall off because all I used was hot glue because I was in a rush. But I've been using Gorilla Glue hot glue, and I have been very impressed with it. I'm not a big advocate of hot glue, but this has really stood up for me. It was pretty hot at the convention. It has a lot of strain, and it's been really good. So that's my build that I did for my Majora's Mask. If I missed anything, you're definitely welcome to ask me any questions. If you like the work I've done, definitely please follow me on Facebook. And I'm always looking to make some new props. So if you have any recommendations, I'm always happy to do some more Legend of Zelda stuff or anything else that you'd like. So give me some recommendations. And let me know if if you have any questions, definitely shoot them my way. So hope this helps, and I hope your builds go really well. Thanks.